So what do we have here? A planet full of cryptids, a planet full of beasts. Aliens, Bigfoot, we've got Yetis running around, Mothman, Slothman, Wolfman, fairies, trolls, elves, and leprechauns, the Chupacabra, the Loch Ness Monster, Mekele Mbembe. There are so many, and what I find interesting is that all of them, without exception, have the same special ability, and that is this. They can all evade us like the Predator. It's like they all went to cryptid school where they all learn how to disappear. I don't understand how every cryptid is a freaking ninja. I mean, these things are always disappearing behind rocks, buildings, bushes, trees, or something diving into the water quickly on sight. Even UFOs. They can't leave a sighting without zooming away at light speed. Now, what I just said should be a clue to everyone. Take any animal you can think of, the rarest, most difficult to find animal you can think of. Now, you can track that animal, you can hunt it, and you can kill it. And you can videotape the whole thing in HD. Not only that, you can bring that animal back for everyone to see and examine. I don't care what it is. A duck-billed platypus, which was once thought to be a myth, but we know that it is not, because of the things I just mentioned. Now, for some strange reason, you can't do that with these cryptids, and even if it is heard of someone catching, killing, or having in their possession the specimen always turns out to be a fake, or missing, destroyed in a fire or something. So, there's another cryptid that seems to be trending again. Mermaids. And you're going to find that this being has a very, very old history. A shattered past, but familiar. You know, there is a whole world down there in the abyss. And yes, there are secrets. I don't want to spend too much time getting into the history of these things, but it is important that you understand how these ideas originate and perpetuate over thousands of years. The idea of mermaids is of course nothing new, and like many other cryptids, they are mythical creatures of many, many ancient cultures and civilizations. That's not so surprising, right? Things may sound a bit fantastic from here, but just bear with me. We are talking about mermaids after all. Now, there are several variations of the creature. For instance, the one we are most familiar with, the Little Mermaid version, is European. So the first thing to understand is that when and if someone finds the remains of a mermaid, there has to be a set standard for what a mermaid is versus some other creature. So that if you find something of the sort, you can look at the features, organs, skeletal structure, and identify the species as a mermaid based on a real-life specimen. Otherwise, you can call the creature whatever you want because it would be the first specimen. So we use the term mermaid here with that in mind. In the waters of the earth, there is a countless number of aquatic species, and about 90% of those species have not been discovered, for two main reasons. First, the world's oceans are incredibly massive, and second, some of these waters are incredibly deep, as well as incredibly dark. Even with the best lighting in the world, you can only see a short distance in the underwater mist. At least in space you can see with optical equipment. Underwater, you need special detection equipment to see past a certain distance, and probably for good reason. I can imagine if a deep-sea diver were able to see the gazillion life forms around them. I don't think we would have such divers. Now, the deeper in the ocean you go, not only does it get darker, the animals get stranger. I recall mentioning one time before this guy, the Magnapinna squid, and that's a real creature. Just one species out of who knows how many. People get so crazy when something strange washes up on shore. Well, that's the ocean for you. Folks, don't you know that the oceans are teeming with beings you have never seen or heard of before? And we don't know how small or how big. In the case of a mermaid, we have to establish whether this is an animal or a humanoid being. And I think most people can tell the difference. There are distinguishable features that say human. Nobody wants to hear about manatees and dugongs. Does that look like a mermaid to you? No, not even close. So we're not going to go there with the manatees when we're looking for Daryl Hannah. So if this is not an animal and an entirely different species of human, we have to ask the question, where did it come from? There are only a few ways as far as I know. You can say God, you can say fallen angels, you can say aliens, you can say evolution, and you can say man. Evolution? Nope. That doesn't even make sense. You don't go from fish to man and get stuck somewhere in between. It doesn't work. The reason being, we are talking about mermaids. See, if we were talking about manatees, then we could discuss the nature of its evolution because it's just an animal. But we're not. We're talking about fish people. So in order to make the mermaid idea work with science, biology, and physics, you have to change some things. And what you end up with is just another animal. So let's move along. If the mermaid is a product of man, through gene manipulation, hybridization experiments, then people would have to have known how to do this a very long time ago. They would have to know how to make fish people going back, for example, to the time of Babylon. And if successful, I don't think what they would end up with would be anything less than a monster. And I'm sure in those days they already had plenty of those. Now, without getting into how God creates a being, I will just assume that he did not create this particular being. I could be wrong, but I'm putting my money on no. So that only leaves us with aliens and angels. Doesn't it seem like the answer to all these things keeps pointing in the same direction? Now, if we say that aliens created mermaids, that in itself sounds weird. We have to get past the alien part first. We also have to consider the possibility that mermaids are aliens, which leads into other topics of underwater aliens and bases. Now, I don't want to get into USOs or unidentified submerged objects or underwater bases here. I'll save that for another discussion, where we will look at the connection between USOs and underwater bases with mermaids, if there is any. Now, the stories of fish people starts off with the Sumerians. They called them the Apkallu, antediluvian demigods, 7 birdmen and 7 fishmen. And according to the legends, the fishmen were sent by Enki to benefit man with moral codes and the craft of building a civilization. The Sumerians had a name for these fishmen, the Abgal, or big fish. What is interesting here is that Enki, the Anunnaki, is the equivalent to one of Enoch's watchers. They are the same being. Also, the Apkallu or Nephilim were semi-divine, meaning they were also part human and they could also mate with humans. And they could also die. And these Apkallu were believed to have also existed before and after the flood. The same story from the Bible. How could there be Nephilim before and after the flood? How could every living thing outside the ark be killed and there still be survivors? Well, because everything outside the ark that was upon the land was killed. Now, I'm sure a good portion of the ocean was wiped out due to extreme water elevation changes, mudslides, earthquakes everywhere due to all the water, volcanoes erupting in the ocean floor, water temperature changes. Even if you were a fish person, how would you ensure your survival? Now, of course, a fish person probably would not need a vehicle to get around in the ocean. However, if they are part human, they would need a vehicle to go up into space. That may be where the USO comes in. I'm sure with the help of the Watchers or Enki, they had the knowledge and ability to engineer such a vehicle. Other than that, how did any of these beings escape the flood? Perhaps you could simply leave the planet in a ship, or maybe it would be possible to hold out in an underwater chamber or cave, or bunker, a base. When it comes to mermaids, what we are dealing with is another ghost, another demon, evil spirit, another shape-shifting extra-dimensional dark entity whose sole purpose is to elude, seduce, and corrupt. Disney's The Little Mermaid is the best story you're gonna get in terms of it being light. The original story by Hans Christian Andersen in 1836, which is a much better story by the way, is a very good story for transitioning the view of mermaids from gods and monsters to a friendlier, sexier being. Because before Ariel, there was the Siren. The Call of the Siren. This gets very interesting as this entity does what many cryptids do, and that is lure you. Why do you think Bigfoot is only seen for a second before it disappears behind a tree? It is luring the witness. Now, the Sirens of Greek mythology come in two forms, depending on the time period, part bird or part sea serpent. They were originally the companions of Persephone, the goddess of the underworld, daughter of Zeus and Demeter. One day, Persephone was gathering flowers and was suddenly kidnapped by Hades. So Demeter gave the Sirens wings so that they could find her. They are depicted as nymphs. They are depicted as beautiful women with bird wings, hypnotic voices, and often holding musical instruments such as a harp. Later on, they were depicted as half female or half male and half fish. An easy transition as the Siren has no one clear history. The stories tell of how lost mariners would get caught in the lure of the Siren's song. Once heard, the victim is hooked. Everything around them becomes mute, and they are uncontrollably attracted to the sound of the siren. Men would abandon ship in an attempt to reach the siren, resulting in their deaths. They say once the siren's call is heard, there is no escape. The merman is depicted as being much less human-looking, more aggressive and monstrous, and very rare in numbers. But again, this depends on the legend. Bird people and fish people. Didn't I just talk about this with the Sumerians? How about this, folks? Let's take a look at the Japanese version of the mermaid. Maybe they have a different story. Now, the ningyo, or human fish, are not as attractive as the Greek siren. They are depicted with the upper torso of a monkey and a lower half of a fish. See, that's what I'm talking about. Some originality. I mean, a fish monkey? That's crazy. Some legends depict this creature as only having the head of a monkey, or sometimes a dreadful-looking human-like head with horns and sharp teeth. Sometimes they were depicted with the head of a bird. See, I knew it. It was too good to be true. What is this fascination with birds and fish and serpents? In West Africa, we have the stories of Mamiwata, another fish lady, a water spirit who also comes in several forms and will also drown you if you don't obey her. What's interesting about her is she is sometimes depicted holding a mirror or a comb, and she is often depicted holding a snake. Folks, I can't make this stuff up. The Native Americans also refer to these beings as water spirits, or half fish, half men. The Australian Aborigines have their own stories of mermaids. They tell a story of how one day some fishermen caught a mermaid in their nets. The mermaid warned the fishermen not to overfish in those waters and to take only what they needed for their families. Well, the fishermen didn't listen to the cute little mermaid, and they continued to overfish the waters, and so she drowned their asses. Now, when it comes to recent sightings of mermaids, we should all know what that is. Anything that is said to be caught on tape looks more like crap on tape. And if these entities are still around, why should the stories be any different? The one thing that varies is how the creature looks. Go ahead and watch Animal Planet's documentary. You will learn very little and see nothing. Maybe some Hollywood magic. No, your best go-tos for information on mermaids are ancient accounts. When people see these creatures, if you've noticed, they all appear as something fitting the environment as a benefit to the witness. I mean, it seems only natural that you would find a big hairy monster in the forest. And it seems only natural that you would find a fishy monster in the water. Just like it seems to make sense that you would only see human-like ghosts or shadow beings in a house or building. What if we consider that these are all one type of being, taking different forms to suit the scene? Whatever will attract you the most. So if you're out in the open water, you have other things to worry about than mermaids. The ocean is like a whole other world. And if you ever come across a mermaid in your travels, maybe along the shore, the bank of a river, maybe you catch a glimpse of something very alluring, beautiful, in the distance beyond your reach. Something you would have to risk your life to get to. This isn't Pirates of the Caribbean. In the real world, it would be considered a very deceptive illusion, a setup. That may have really cost people their lives in the past, as with many of the other shape-shifting cryptid beings that may exist. Just remember, yeah, she might be hot, but that crucial bottom half is a fish. Good luck with that.